Hi, everyone. I am Shrestha Basu Mallick. I am the Group Product Manager on the Gemini API and AI Studio. And today I'm here to tell you a little bit about everything we have on this developer platform. Today, we'll be talking about the key Gemini API and AI Studio features, as well as how you can get started using the API and AI Studio. So, one of the first questions we often get is what modalities are supported in the Gemini models today? And we support, on the input side, we support text, image, audio, and video. And then on the output side, we support text, but other modalities are coming pretty soon. We also obviously support system instructions as well as function calling, which we'll be talking about later in the talk. And then on the output side, we do support structured outputs in the form of JSON schema. What models do we have available? So here you can see the stable models. So we have 1.5 Flash, which is probably one of the best workhorse models from a price performance point of view in the market today. Uh, we have 1.5 Flash 8B, which is a small but mighty model, which you can use for lower intelligence but high frequency tasks because the cost is really really competitive on this one, as well as low latency. And then for the tasks which need maximum quality, we have 1.5 Pro. So these are our 1.5 series of stable models. Um, and obviously we keep updating these. um, we also support a lot of experimental models, and we keep sort of rotating these models out. These are leading edge models which are high on capability but may not be ready for production yet, or we want to do a little bit of testing with these models before we go to production. And the one that we released the most recently was the Gemini Experimental 1114. And it topped the LMSys arena uh, overall, but also in capabilities like math, hard prompts, creative writing, as well as vision. So this is a really, really good model that we've made available early to developers to play with and prototype on. Coming back to Flash, so I mentioned that Flash is probably one of the best models from a price performance point of view in the market today. And as you can see here, this is a chart from artificial analysis. And you can see that in terms of price versus quality, Flash is almost in a category of its own on the top right here. And that does tell you that, like it's a really, really, really good model for the price. Here's HB. Here's a latency analysis that was, again, pulled from artificial analysis. And again, you can see that in terms of output speed, Flash 8P is really up there. You can get 285 tokens per second out, which is pretty remarkable. Here's a quote. Agents are um, going to be really relevant in 2025. And here's a quote from Agency AI, which is building an agent ops platform. And they find that when they use 8B, the cost of an individual agent run drops by an order of magnitude. And this is what we need if we want agents to, be more ubiquitous, if we want hierarchies of agents working together. I mean, the cost and the latency will need to be at a point which enables scaling, and models like Flash help to do that. The TLDR, as you can see here from a quote from Logan, who's also on the team, is that you can get started building with the Gemini API in less than 5 minutes with just an API key, and get access to all of these models and all of these capabilities. For the rest of this talk, I will go through all the capabilities we have on this developer platform. The first set of capabilities to talk about are, of course, the standard text and document processing capabilities. And the one thing I want to call out here is we often get a lot of questions about the size of the output context window, and we are looking into it and should be coming soon. Image and video. So you can see we support a lot of formats with both images and videos, as well as features such as bounding boxes, which is not a lot of people seem to know about it, but when they discover it, they are pretty delighted. Here you have a tweet from Pietro, who built an agentic system that looks at an UI, detects the bounding boxes, and refines the results. Video understanding. This is probably one of my favorite capabilities, and which Gemini does remarkably well. I'm a huge movie buff. Cinepile is a data set of YouTube videos based on movie clips. And the idea is you get all the models to answer questions related to those YouTube videos. And Gemini leads the pack in terms of both setting and technical analysis, but also narrative and plot analysis. These models, as you saw with the LMSys leading model, as well as with the results here, like are really, really, really good at vision, really good at video understanding. Here are some other image examples. On the left, the person has used Gemini to generate an SVG, including the coordinates. On the right is one of my favorite examples of usage of Gemini. So someone took a video of their apartment with all the valuables and then used a combination of Flash and Firebase to take that 10-second videos and get their valuables quoted immediately. So you see all on the right, all the objects that it detected and then found price points for. Here's an example of using Pro to actually critique your product by making a video of you using the product along with commentary, and then have Gemini give you very specific feedback. Here he used Pro for the best quality. We also support audio. You can see the formats. And on the right, we have an example of somebody who's actually using Gemini to prep for a talk. I should have done it for this talk, but basically they export a PDF of this slides and record themselves doing a dry run and get Gemini to give them precise feedback. So let's now talk about some other key capabilities. The first one, which is again unique to Google currently, is an extremely long context window. So right now we support a context window of 2 million tokens. And this opens up a lot of use cases, such as a lot of video use cases, um, use cases such as uploading an entire code base and asking questions, use cases such as uploading a whole body of documents. Like imagine a sales rep that needs to be able to talk to a whole range of products. They could just upload information about all of those products into Gemini and then ask Gemini questions when they get questions from their customers. And here's a tweet from Logan, which kind of uh, helps to understand just how really large this context window is. It's the equivalent of 100,000 lines of code, 16 English novels, and 400 podcast transcripts. So it's a really, really large context window. And the other side of this is when developers use this context window, um, they can also have gains in cost by using context caching, which is another feature that we have. And the idea here is if you are going to repeatedly use the same context, then you can cache it, and we charge you a significantly lower input token price on those cached tokens. So this is again a feature that we were the first to take to market. Now OpenAI and Anthropic both do have it, but it's a really valuable feature for developers who are repeatedly using the same context, and in certain cases that's a long context again and again. The other thing that we have available through AI Studio and the API is tools. So the first tool here is code execution. What this is basically an execution sandbox that's available to developers, and it helps with generating and running code to uh, come up with and check reasoning on things like math problems. That's the implementation we have currently. It's a sandbox, and if you have a question that could benefit from code based reasoning, for example solving equations, uh, you can turn on this tool. We are in the process of adding more features to this tool, such as file input output. Um, but here's an example of Paige Bailey, who I believe is also one of the speakers, uploading the text for a short story and asking Gemini to analyze that text to tell her how many times Harlequin occurred. Um, Here is an example of that I tried of putting in a really, really dirty data set, and I got Gemini using code execution to clean that data and format that data up for me. The next tool that folks are very excited about is structured output. And this basically constrains Gemini to respond with a specific JSON schema. And what there are several examples that you can see on the slide, which all involve pulling out information in a structured format out of an unstructured or mixed format input. You see an example here of someone who recorded themselves lifting weight and got Gemini to write JSON, which tells them the exercise's name, set count, rep count, etc. Here's an example that where I actually got Gemini to generate a messy email, which has lots of data jumbled in all over the email. And it did a beautiful job of extracting it and putting it in a JSON format. The next tool is function calling. This is where users get to write their own functions and have Gemini call these as tools. And you can imagine various use cases such as lighting control, in-car controls. Um, Here's an example of Page again defining a bunch of functions and having Gemini call them as tools. And then the final tool that we just released recently is grounding with Google search. And the idea here is you can now use the power of Google search to make Gemini's responses more accurate, more recent, and in certain cases, richer. So the example here is asking who won the US Open this year. Without search grounding, Gemini either doesn't answer the question or answers it with outdated information. But with search grounding turned on, it actually gives you the right answer as well as gives you citation sources that you can click on and go get more information about what really happened. So that's the final tool that we have available. We also do support fine tuning through the Gemini API. So developers can now use an API key to both tune the models as well as call the fine tuned models. So that's the final capability. And yeah, to get started, we have a prompt gallery on AI Studio. You can play with the models on AI Studio, and then you can use AI Studio to create an API key. And we have like several coding examples available through our cookbook. Um, but yeah, reach out to the team with questions, and we're happy to help. Thank you.